Welcome back, everyone. Greg Essenmacher here, your host. You know me, and I have a special guest today, none other than Atia Black. If you don't know Atia, you're going to learn more about her today. With a strong background in dental sales and relationship building, Atia has made a lasting impact in the dental industry, and she has not only in the industry, but on my heart. She's a good friend of mine by driving collaborative partnerships and supporting practice growth. Her expertise spans areas of practice management, revenue optimization, and client satisfaction, making her a trusted resource for her clients and partners alike. Known for her hands-on approach and dedication to client success, she excels in fostering long-term relationships that add value for her clients outside of work. Atia enjoys staying active, traveling, and spending time with her labradoodle, Che, which I understand is right there by her side. So hopefully we get a little word of advice from Che today. Welcome, Atia.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg. I really appreciate the invitation to be here with you. It's such an honor.
Yeah, absolutely. And during the pre-show, we were talking about our pups. One of mine is right here next to me, and she was talking about Che being right by her side. So, hey, if you can have your pups right next to you while you're recording on a podcast, I mean, you're a friend of mine. So, for all of you out there in the listening world, put a note on whatever platform you're on. If you're on YouTube watching, or if you're on any of your listening platforms for this podcast, please give a little shout out for what kind of dog you have, or if it's another pet. You can have a cat, a lizard, a snake. It doesn't matter what a cricket, like whatever you have. Like, just please let us know. We'd love to hear. So, Atia, I'm also in the pre-show. We were talking about your name, and I said how, like, because I love to have mnemonics or ways to remember people's names. And what did I share with you? Do you remember what I shared with you of how I'm going to remember your name?
The connection with your grandkids, and they have an tia, like an
They
aunt in
they have
Spanish.
a Tia, right? You're a friend of mine, so I'm gonna say you are going to be a Tia to my grandbabies who will be raised bilingual. Which, by the way, if my son and daughter-in-law are listening, seriously, like anytime now, you can tell me it's time. I am ready to be a grandfather. Anyway, I don't want to get too off track, so
Little
Atia,
quote.
yeah, a little plug. So I've known you for a while in the industry, and it's been great getting to know you. I'd love to hear, how did you get into the dental industry? I'd love to hear people's origin story about how they found this fantastic industry of collaboration that we call dental.
Yeah, Greg, I like many people in the industry, I started very early in a dental practice. 17 years old, doing a work release program from high school,
Wait,
and
did you
fell
say
in
work
love.
release? Was that
Yeah.
from high school or from prison? I just want to clarify for my listening audience. You
No,
said work release.
isn't it the same thing? Isn't high school like essentially prison?
For a lot of us, it is. Yes. For those of us who hadn't come out yet, it is like a prison. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, please
Yeah. No,
continue.
it was high school. And the cool thing was I was getting experience, but also getting paid and getting high school credit. So I knew the dentist personally. He was my personal dentist. They needed some help in the office. And I started out helping sterilize instruments and turn over rooms. And because I'm somebody that just loves to like continue to learn and like, what can I do? I see something that needs to be done. So I was very quickly transitioned into being a dental assistant and then literally worked my way all around the dental practice, office management, all the things. And love dentistry, but fell in love with the business side of dentistry and how it makes a huge impact in how the practice is run and the production and overall profitability that can be created. So I started in a dental practice, was there for about 15 years, transitioned into a different space of dentistry on the vendor side, and then was there for about 4 years with the dental analytics company, and then was recruited to Method Procurement. I've been here about 2.5 years.
Fantastic. And I want to get into method procurement for sure, but just for my listening audience, complete transparency, I did not give her money to plug all about the business of dentistry, which is the subtext to the Two Sleuth podcast, because she said she loves the business side of dentistry. There's Che. I knew we would get him into the program somehow. Thank you, Che, for piping in for us. Absolutely. And I loved how you said that you love to continue to learn, because one of the things that we love at G&A Consult is being able to continue to provide for our full arch clinicians, a broad 360 view of their practice. It's not just about the teach, coach, and train every touch point of the patient journey, but it's been an area of growth for me personally. When I started out and started this business 3 years ago, after leaving Neodent, it really was all about other areas because I did not come from the practices. You basically grew up in dentistry inside a clinic, right? So for me, it was a practice management system. Like, yeah, I see them clicking buttons and putting people onto a schedule, but I really had no clue. So a learning edge for me, and then bringing people into my business that really knew the operation side and knew that aspect of the business. So I'd love to hear you talk about that and as things evolve because they do so quickly in the dental space. So I really enjoyed hearing you talk about that. So tell me about the time that you transitioned from working in the dental practices to working with dental practices. What was that transition like? Because I know there's many in my listening audience out there who either have or are looking to make that type of transition.
Yeah. Well, I knew it was time to make the change. You kind of hit that point where you've done everything in the practice or everything that's interesting to you, and you're looking for new opportunities. Luckily, I had a friend who worked at Dental Intelligence that kind of said, "Hey, go talk to them. I think it might be something you're interested in." And from there, it was like a match made in heaven. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is music to my ears." Like, I get that you use the numbers and you use the data to tell a story, and if you don't look at the data, you don't know where you're at and you don't know how to get where you're trying to go. And so for me, doing that transition made a lot of sense into another vendor, if you will, or a SaaS company that taught what I already knew. For me, it literally was just a seamless step over because it was everything I was living. And then I could now share that with other people in dental practices in terms of now I can do more. I can do more from literally sitting in one seat and reach more practices to reach more patients to do more dentistry. And to me, it just was a really great transition.
Well, in talking about dental intelligence, it's really about not only having the numbers and the metrics, but what does it really say? And where do you put the focus and attention to get the biggest uplift in revenue and driving revenue and profitability and being able to understand what the numbers are speaking to focus and attention and put the effort and energy in order to be more profitable, more efficient in the practice. So I appreciate you bringing that forward. And shout out to my friends at Dental Intelligence. They're great folks. I was at IntelliCon and I had the good fortune of presenting a workshop there as well on patient experience. And then you mentioned SaaS, right? The software as a service. And I think it's an area that really is, so essential and critically important. And so that transitioning now into method procurement, which is where you are now, you know, there's for me, right? And maybe it's because it's not a lane or area of expertise, but certainly a spot where G&A Consult has developed a partnership with Method. And thank goodness for my director of operations, Shar. I mean, this is her area of expertise, right? She's worked with y'all for a while before she joined G&A Consult. Help to clear the landscape or a little bit of the murkiness for someone like myself. And I'm sure my listening audience is going to blow me up on social, be like, Greg, everybody knows what that's about. But how it really works and evolves into implementation of what is it exactly that you do? Sure, it's, we can find better prices and vendors and all that, but break it down to simple. And then maybe we can get a little bit more in depth in it, if you could.
Yeah, for sure. So, simply put, Method will help you put all together in one place, all of the vendors that you purchase from. And we're not trying to disrupt relationships. We want you to purchase from who you trust and like doing business with. But understanding who has the best price, what's in stock, and then getting it all in one place, there's tons of value in that. And having the simplicity of it's all right there. I can see everything I need to. And oh, by the way, I've got a million other things going on. Now I can just plug it all in. And then it's just waiting for me to do the rest of the work and check out in the end. So the simplicity of Method is we help you order your dental supplies from the vendors, the suppliers that you know and trust and want to purchase from. Like
Yeah, I
it's
love
very
it there. I was
simple.
wondering if you were going to say the best vendors. I could see the words right there waiting to come out. But a couple of things that you said there, right? So the goal isn't to disrupt relationships. So you can still use the products that you have fallen in love with, that you found the best, whether it's a 2x2 that, doesn't fray and leave fragments of, strands in patients' mouths or whatever the case may be, because there are favorites, that clinicians have. Or it could be something as specific as, if they're using a bone grafting material, or if they like a particular type, fill in the blank, right, of all the different supplies. And what I'm hearing, and you didn't say the words, but I'm going to put some words in your mouth and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm wrong often. Just ask my husband. It happens many times a day, right? It's the time management piece, right? So is it in stock? Is it going to arrive when I need it to? Or do I need to course correct and check out something else in the interim or for good? And then also the profitability. So it's the dollars side, but it's also the I need to be able to function side of the business. And a lot of times it's not the clinician, right? It's that lead dental assistant, or it's Becky up front, or it's Yesenia, who is helping the lead dental assistant, depending on the size of the organization, or it's somebody who has tons of efficiency in an emerging DSO where, suddenly now there's 17 practices when there used to be 4, and we're trying to bring them all under one umbrella. So am I hearing that right from you?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. At Method, we call it hard costs in the savings, like dollar amounts, and soft cost in the time, the simplicity, all those other things that are like soft impacts, but really do overall impact the practice.
Yeah, those soft costs are huge, right? So we like to talk about opportunity cost at GNA Consult. It's the speed to lead when it comes a lead that comes in, and what is it that you're giving up in order to focus on that particular lead in full arch? And if you have a profitable and a thriving GP side of your practice, yes, there is something you're going to, necessarily shift. But if you're taking profitability from your GP side of the practice and just shifting that over to the full arch side of the practice, there's no net gain. Then why would you do it anyway? And so it sounds like to me that you're sharing the same concepts. Like if it's just a net zero, right? It's a net even, then that's not really an opportunity, because I'm sure that there are some costs in order to use your platform. I mean, people, they don't call it show friends, they call it show business. But overall, it's the hard costs adding to the soft cost. It's the sum total that I'm imagining that you're really offering as a service in order to create some efficiencies in a practice, in a group. So what is it? Is it more single practices? Is it emerging groups? Where are you really finding the sweet spot that you're finding the most uplift in the shortest amount of time with clients that you're working with, customers that you're working with?
Yeah, so Method actually has two different platforms. One is our Essentials version that works really, really well with single practices trying to save money and be competitive with the DSO, or working with a group purchasing organization that you want to plug in all that contracted pricing for. That's one channel, and then the other one is the DSOs. They're looking for that control, and how do they gain that control over clear down to the individual user in the purchasing. And Method has what's called our enterprise version for that, and it has things like approval workflows to ensure that, like I said, down to the end user, they are not over ordering. They're not ordering too small of an order and having the additional administration costs and expenses, making sure they stay in budget. And to your point, in category budgets. So there's so many parts to procurement that is very confusing. And to your point, if you don't know, it's a lot. It's a lot to take on. And having a tool that helps you here's where you start, here's where we're going to dive in. And then we're going to, filter from there. Okay, now we're going to put in approvals. Now we're going to put in receiving. Now we're going to start focusing on the inventory side. Like, having all of that to grow into in our enterprise version is the other way. So to answer your point, it depends on, I would say the biggest group that we get impact from is the DSO space. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking back, it's the DSOs having the control over it. But we do see a lot of impact on the individual practices as well. So how's that for a very ambiguous answer?
No, I think it's fair, right? I mean, what you're seeing initially, right, is the impact on a DSO with such a large organization and being able to put, governors and restrictor plates on here's where your limit of ordering and budgeting and visibility, and the consistency that groups are looking for, top down and bottom up, all the way from each individual practices as it relates to a percentage of the production, so that they understand better of cash flows that are across the board. Because when you're talking about an individual practice, you can see on the shelf if there are 17 of one item and 22 of another. If it is not just practice removed to a regional, but a regional removed to an area, and there are 75, 80, 120 locations, there's no visibility or touch points whatsoever. And so the numbers have to speak to, as we were going back to the point about the metrics and what did the numbers actually say. So and I thought it was a really savvy point that you pointed out, it's not just make sure they're not ordering too much, it's make sure they're not ordering too little. Just because they might be heavy in one particular treatment that they're providing in a particular month, they also want to make sure that that one-off isn't also causing, some type of anomaly in their ordering, in their patterning, that's going to cause a ripple effect down the line that potentially could create a shortage or an overflow in a certain area of a particular item or SKU that could cause problems for the group, or a provider or a vendor or whatever the case may be, which I think is critically important to be able to be a good partner, right? To be able to see around the corner in the lane of expertise that you have. And that really is what we're talking about. If you're going to partner with a provider, and we find that as well, there are many LMS platforms out there when it comes to, teaching and training on, how to convert a lead to a consultation, how to do treatment planning. But when it comes to big cases like in Full Arch, which we do at G&A Consult, that customization is critically important. And you're talking about that at the enterprise level, that all of the different layers and all of the different verticals within this big umbrella known as procurement, that customization is critically important depending on what the goals are and what the initiatives are underneath it for each individual DSO. So I can understand when you said, yes, the DSOs are getting the most uplift, but we don't want to forget about the individual practices. So I can certainly appreciate that. That's making a lot of sense to me. So what does it look like for, let's just go to the area of an individual clinic. We have a lot of clinicians and also a lot of staff that are listening to this particular podcast. Say, for example, if they're interested in learning more, walk me through what that process looks like for them to uncover and discover, is this a good match for me? Other than just look at the website and maybe there is. What is that discovery phase, and what does the process look like for them to really get a good understanding of whether it would be a good match for their particular practice? What can you do to help them see that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things that you'll want to look at as you're looking at adding a procurement solution. How many people are involved in your ordering process? What does that look like? How much time is it taking them? How many suppliers are you ordering from? That's a big one. A lot of times, if you're ordering from just one supplier, it tends to be thought that, oh, that's great. I get all of my supplies from one supplier. They give me the best price. It's simple. It's easy, one-stop shop. But that's not always the case. And if it's a purchasing best practice to order from several different vendors, 3, 4, 5 on a regular basis. One of the reasons is it helps them stay competitive, and it also helps you get the best price. when vendors know that they're competing for your price, they're going to show up with their best foot forward every time. And so understanding the difference between ordering from one vendor, and if you are ordering from one vendor, great, but the homework to ensure that you're not dealing with price creep from supplies, that tends to happen. But then if you've got multiple vendors, comparing those side by side is also time consuming. And that's where that soft cost comes in it's taking my team quite a bit of time to order. So those are some of the nuances that you'll want to look at. You'll also want to look at, do I have a budget in place? Are we meeting that budget? Are we exceeding that budget? How often? Do we have budgets per department or category or per provider? That's a really great way to identify. You could have one provider that is blowing all of the practices budget out of the water by, some specific item that they absolutely love. Well, that's okay. That product is a non-negotiable to them. Fine. Like that's kind of what they want, is that autonomy to order. However, then if we can save money on some other disposables or things like that, that's going to help the budget stay where it needs to. But until you start tracking that, there's no way to know. And often we hear, oh, well, we order what we need. Absolutely, you order what you need, but you need to make sure you're tracking it. And then understanding, is it what category? Like maybe you've got, disposables should be 35% of your overall budget. Where are you at in that? Does that fall in, or can you find some ways to cut costs there and stay in a, that 4 to 6% range in your supply spend? So that's another one that I would look at. And then, do you have a budget for a procurement solution? Like, how much do you want to pay for something like this? How much is it worth to you? So as you go in, you'll know, okay, I need to ask these specific questions. And to your point, Greg, Method has put out a buyer's guide, and not just for procurement software, but for any software. Usually people vetting software are not software people for dental practices. They do the role that this would cover, but it's not, they don't buy software all the time. And so what do they need to know to buy software? Method understood that it's kind of ambiguous for them. And so we got several of our partners together to create our buyer's guide to give you guidelines on what do I need to know. So if you want to learn more about that, Greg, I'll give you my information. You can even drop it in your link below. But if you email partnerships, and that's plural, partnerships at methodusa.com, we can get you the link to download the buyer's guide as well.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure we get that in the show notes. And I love what you shared as well, that not only, that I don't want to say the generic number, that 4 to 6% range for supplies, but even breaking it down more, the 35% of all of your supplies being disposables. One of the things that we find at G&A Consult is that the categorization of supplies, and just in general on the P&L statements with our accelerator clients, it's usually a little messy when we start working with them, with the bookkeepers, and being able to get that cleaned up first and foremost. Then we can see what's really happening with the numbers and what the cost of doing dentistry is. Then we can really start to work on the hard costs in general with practices. And so there's a lot of groundwork typically before we really start to make the progress moving forward. And so I can appreciate you sharing a lot of those actuals and statistics that from your space. So, well, Atia, this is the point of the program. All of my guests play a little something called What the Sleuth is Going On? It's 3 rapid fire questions. First thing that comes to mind, are you ready to play?
I'm ready.
All right, question number 1. What's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered?
Oh my goodness. And I was clinical. So, there was a woman that came in that had, I don't think she'd brushed her teeth in probably years. I'm not kidding. We were, I don't know how graphic you want me to be. We were literally
Go for it. It's a podcast.
Scraping off even her tongue. Like, it was so bad. Like, type of breath. So yeah, that was a fun one.
And for those of you just listening, head over to the YouTube channel with the she just did. The visual is you can't imagine just by the sound alone. Love it. Question number 2. If you could change one thing about your smile, what would it be?
Well, Greg, I
mean,
love
I
coffee.
could see that smile. I mean, again, stay on the YouTube channel if you're here. If not, hop over. It's the 24-minute mark, 25 minutes. It's a great smile, but go ahead. I'll let you.
Yeah, so I love my coffee, and my teeth get really sensitive when bleaching. So I'm still old school, using the trays and so I don't bleach as often as I should. And yeah, I would not be sensitive and be able to have a little bit brighter white smile.
Oh, well, this is going to lead right into question number 3. And could somebody come up with a whitening that does not make teeth sensitive? And I know people are like, oh, this doesn't sensitize teeth. Ours doesn't. Yeah, it does. For those of us who have sensitive teeth and don't like going to the dentist, yes, it does. Okay, question number 3. If you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, and no, you can't choose your own, which one would you choose and why?
I would choose digital x-rays, like that transition from films to digital. I feel like that has been a big game changer in dentistry in making it faster, and being able to then translate that into the AI piece, because it's digital and now it's in the computer and they can use that to, find areas of concern, etc. That's what I would do, is digital x-rays.
Yeah, I mean, in my space, the full arch space, the teeth in a day stuff, man, I mean, it's just revolutionary to be able to see where you're going in, and it's not the whole, oh, look what I found type of situation. 1,000%. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Atia, I want to respect your time and my listening audience, which actually in the pre-show you talked about, thank you for keeping it under 30 minutes, because you could do it in one sitting, or listening or running or whatever activities that listening audience is doing. And thank you to all my listeners. Is there anything I haven't asked you or that you'd like to share with my listening audience before you go?
Well, you didn't ask me if I had any questions for you.
Oh, I don't know that I've had somebody turn
What's
around like that.
total?
Oh, all right. Role reversal. Go for it. I'm an open book. People know
Right,
this.
right.
Go.
It's an easy one. I want to know, what is your most memorable day in dentistry?
Oh, most memorable. Oh my gosh. I just had like 3 literally flash across, and all right, I'll share the first one that came. Early in my career in full arch, so I've been in dentistry 8 years and focused on full arch for nearly 11. I think it was year number 2 in full arch, being in a full arch surgery in the operatory. I will not mention names. Um, the clinician had, I'll say, a little bit of a temper, and sure enough, it wasn't going well, and across the room flew the handpiece, and it stuck into the wall. Probably my most memorable. Certainly, like the patient reveals and the smiles. I mean, that was the second one that came, which really, solidified my love for and passion for full arch dentistry. But that one, yeah, for sure. That one was the first one, and there was a third one that came up, which was being able to present on the stage with 250 doctors, and just that sense of giving, instead of the nervousness that happened in Hawaii in February of this year. Was the third. All 3 of them flashed almost at the same time, but the first one was the handpiece, and I thought, it'd be a little vulnerable, and it's not for dramatic effect why I shared it, but just for anyone out there, just take a breath, find some balance. It's not the end of the world. Doesn't matter what happens. Find some balance. And I think that you've heard that from a lot of guests of mine that have been on fairly recently, but throughout the whole Two Soup podcast in episode number 80 something, almost 90 that we're at. Find some balance. Take a deep breath. Find your chi. Not your che, which is your pup, but find your chi, right? Find some balance. So thank you for asking me that. I appreciate it. And tell me, Atia, how do people find you, or what's the easiest way to get to Method Procurement so that individuals can reach out?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Greg. You can find me probably the best place is on LinkedIn. It's my name, Atia Black, Method Procurement also. And then same email that I mentioned before, partnerships at methodusa.com. That's either of those places. I love to hear from people, love to connect. You mentioned in my intro, I am definitely a relationship person. So please reach out. I would love to meet you if I don't know you, and love to collaborate on anything that anybody has interest for.
And that is absolutely true because I reached out on LinkedIn a number of years ago to Atia, and she was very kind. And I met her at an event, and just a very giving person, and built relationship with her. So my guest today has been Atia Black with with Method Procurement. I could have said Procurement Method, but hey, we'll say it the proper direction. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Two Sleuth podcast.